All right, so let's talk about dryness. And I'm not talking about dryness like dry eye. I'm talking about a dry martini. Yesterday we talked about, or in my last video I should say, we talked about the classic martini recipe. But you're gonna hear in movies, you're gonna hear at bars, people are gonna order, the dry martini. Yeah? And then you hear people talk about varying degrees of dryness. They'll say, extra dry, bone dry, they'll say wet. And ultimately, we're talking about drinks here, so obviously they're all wet. But what does that mean? Dryness refers specifically to the dry vermouth. And the drier you want it, the less vermouth is going to be in the cocktail. So in other words, if we're talking about a classic martini, that's going to be a 5-to-1 ratio of gin or vodka to dry vermouth. If we're talking about a wet martini, it's going to be a 2-to-1 ratio. The original martini, so people argue about who made the first martini. I'm not going to get into the history of it, at least not yet. Maybe if you guys want me to delve into it, I'll do a little bit more research. But a lot of, bartending scholars, bar historians, cocktail historians, I'm not sure what the correct title there is, will say that the martini was actually a follow-up to the Martinez. And the Martinez actually is a 50-50 gin to sweet vermouth with a splash of maraschino liqueur. Then after that, the first martini was that wet ratio. Like I said before, it's going to be that 2 parts gin to 1 part vermouth. Now, what is vermouth? I'm planning on doing a full-on vermouth primer, at least with the 3 most popular types of vermouth. But basically, just so you're aware, it's a fortified wine. Today, we're talking about dry vermouth, and like I said before, the 3 top most popular, at least to me the most popular, are going to be dry vermouth, which is typically French vermouth, sweet vermouth, which is typically Italian, and then another one which is kind of in between the two, that's either called Bianco if it's Italian or Blanc if it's French. I have today a bottle of Dryness dry vermouth. I'm just going to pour it. Kind of let you taste it, or I'm going to taste it, describe it to you guys. As you can see, it's got kind of a golden color. It's got, so I don't know how to describe that. If you ever taste a glass of wine, like a Riesling, and it's kind of got this pucker factor, kind of hits you right there just from the scent. You kind of get that, that's that dryness that we're talking about for the cocktail. Like I said before, it's a fortified wine, which means you're going to want to keep this in the refrigerator. It oxidizes just like any wine, but basically it's a wine that is fortified with some additional type of alcohol. Sometimes it's cognac, brandy, so we're talking basically vermouth, Madeira, Marsala wines. These are all fortified wines. And like I said, keep it in the fridge. Each brand of vermouth has its own subtle nuances. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic when Stanley Tucci did his video on how to make a martini, he famously said, do not buy the brand of vermouth that has martini in the name. I don't agree with him. I mean, I don't disagree with him in the sense that it's not necessarily the best, but at the same time, it is the most accessible. And they also sell them in 375 milliliter bottles, which sometimes does come in handy, because if you're not going to finish off this bottle in about a month and a half, it's going to start to develop a funky taste. So let me taste this now, and then we're going to get to the actual martini so we can kind of talk about that. So it's sweet. Not as sweet vermouth, but it does have a sweetness to it. But it does finish off, and like I said, it finishes off right here, it has that dryness. Little by little, I'm feeling my mouth get drier as it's there. Right off the bat, you're feeling the botanicals. And ultimately, it makes a big difference. Think about it. I made a video recently on the classic martini, and I talked about how the martini is a cocktail. It's a spirit-forward cocktail where you're basically diluting gin or vodka with this wine. So you want something that's going to be subtle, something that's going to kind of give a little bit of, because ultimately the star of the martini is always going to be the gin. This is playing a supporting role, so it's going to boost it up. Gin has its botanicals. You want something that's not going to compete with the juniper. You're going to want something that's going to kind of boost it up. And I feel like this has got a little bit of citrus, it's got a little bit of salinity to it, and it's going to play nicely with both the gin and the vodka. Obviously the vodka has that neutral flavor, so vermouth is going to take a heavier role in those drinks. So I have ready here, I'm going to pour them out here just so you guys can see them. Pre-poured cocktails. This is the equivalent of what we did yesterday, or the other day on my last video. This is the classic dry martini, all right? And like I said before, this is a 5-to-1 ratio. Now, if you're looking at them, you'll notice that that same golden hue, this is the most golden, because this is actually the this is the 2-to-1 ratio, which is classically known as the wet martini. The dry martini is the 5-to-1 ratio. This is, I guess, 5-to-1/2 ratio, 5 parts gin to a 1/2 part vermouth. And then the last one we have here, and this one's going to be extra dry. So we have wet, dry, extra dry, and then this is what's known as a rinse. Basically, they put a splash of vermouth in the glass, swirl it around, pour it out, and then pour the gin right into it. Basically, 2.5 ounces, 5 ounces of gin to a bar spoon, if that, of vermouth. Each one, I'm going to taste them now. We're going to talk about it. Two variations that I'm not talking about today, and maybe I'll talk about it later on if you guys, again, this channel takes off, you guys chime in and tell me you want to see this. I'll make them and describe them and talk about them. On the one hand, we have the 50-50. 50-50 is just that. It's equal parts. It's going to be equal parts vermouth to gin or vodka. The other one I'm going to talk about also along that same vein is the reverse. I really have no interest in doing the reverse martini, but again, if you guys want to know what it's like, I'll make it, I'll show you guys, but that's going to be, while this one is a 2-to-1 or this one is a 5-to-1, it's going to be now a 1-to-5, 1 part gin to 5 parts vermouth. Basically, it's a lower ABV, lower alcohol volume cocktail, not as spirit forward, but at the same time, it still gives you that martini feel. But again, that's just on one side of the spectrum of drinks that we'll talk about later on if you guys are interested. On the other side is the bone dry. On that other video I made, I did talk about how Churchill loved to say that the way he liked his martini was you would open up the bottle, you'd kind of pass it by the drink, or in other words, you would set it at the end of the table, you would glance at it, and then that's it. That's all you would do with the vermouth. I see no reason. It's also called the bone dry martini. It's basically straight. We're talking about straight gin or straight vodka with your garnish, your twist, or your olive. If you want to try straight, if you want to try straight vodka, you try straight vodka. It's not a martini though, in my humble opinion. You know, obviously, if that's your jam, you do you, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, like I said, the whole point of this channel, the whole reason why I started doing this is because I want people to feel more comfortable. I want people to understand what it is that they're ordering and make less, they're less likely, if you're informed as to what it is you're going to be ordering, you're going to be less likely to go to a bar, order something that you don't know what it is, and then be utterly disappointed and be like, I hate martinis, I hate this. It's like, if you like martinis or if you hate martinis, that's on you. And that's that's ultimately up to you, and there's nothing wrong with it one way or the other. I just want to make sure that you're giving it a fair shake. So let's start off with the wet martini. Like I said, this is a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 parts gin, 1 part vermouth. Like I said, the color, you can see it here, it's the most golden. It's diluted. It's basically, like I said, it's 3 ounces of alcohol. 2 of them are gin, 1 part is going to be that vermouth. So, compared to, this is good. I'm a big fan of the wet, but it does have that more pronounced vermouth flavor. Obviously, with gin, you're still getting that gin flavor, you're still getting that juniper, you're still getting the botanicals, but you're actually getting more of the salinity now from that vermouth. And this vermouth has a little bit of citrus in it, not too much. Other vermouths are a little bit more citrusy. But you're getting the notes there, you're getting more of it, and like I said, it's one of these where it's probably more pronounced than it would be in these other ones, because little by little we're going to be phasing out how much vermouth is in the cocktail. So this is the dry martini, this is the classic martini. You go to a bar, typically, if you go to a martini bar, I should say, certain hotel cocktail bars, steakhouses, I feel you're gonna get this. If you order a martini and they don't ask you, this is gonna be what you get, because it's gonna give you that 5-to-1 ratio of gin or vodka to dry vermouth. And this is perfect. This is, and it's not perfect in the cocktail sense, it's perfect as in the balance sense. I feel this has the best drinkability. I feel like this is one where it's not as harsh as these are gonna be. This is gonna be, you know, closer to drinking straight gin. On this side, I feel like it's easier to drink, more mellow, but I feel that this has that bite. I feel that the perfect, you know, the dry martini, the classic ratio gives you that bite of the alcohol, but at the same time, it's smooth, it's easy to drink. You can have 2 or 3 of these before dinner. Doris Day family said that she loved martinis, but drank 2 at the most. 3 she would be under the table, 4 she was under the host. And I do follow that rule, but like I said, this is the perfect 2 martini, you know, drink. It's got high alcohol, it's gonna hit you where, you know, where it counts, but at the same time, it's still giving you that drinkability, that mellowness, by diluting the gin with the vermouth. Now on this side, we're almost clear, right? If you're looking, and don't know if you can see them that well, but comparing the two, right? This is almost that golden shade. This is just a touch of golden. It's more clear than gold. And this is the extra dry martini. And like I said, we've crossed that threshold here. This is almost straight gin. This, you know, it has a little bit of something extra. Personally, I'm not crazy about this because I'm feeling like I'm drinking straight gin. And there's nothing wrong with drinking straight gin, but at the same time, it is harsh. I'm getting that juniper unbothered by anything else, you know, and it's basically just full force and not my thing. And then last one, we have that rinse that I was telling you about before. And same. Now, funny enough, I almost like the rinse more than I like the extra dry. And I can't put my finger on it. I don't know if it's just because of the fact that here the vermouth is completely diluted. It's poured into the mixing glass, stirred, you know, until it's well incorporated. While here it's not incorporated. Here it's literally poured in the glass, and the whole glass is given that flavor of the vermouth before you pour the gin in there. You chill the gin the same way, pour it in the cocktail shaker or the mixing glass, stir it until cold, and then you pour it into the glass. But that's interesting. I was not expecting this to actually be a little bit smoother, and I don't know what it is about the ratio. You know, I guess the assembly of it, that it kind of gives it a little bit more drinkability, in my opinion, than the extra dry. These two I love. 2-to-1, 5-to-1, you know, wet, dry, and then the rinse actually was really nice. I know the Blake Lively, Anna Kendrick movie, A Simple Favor. She talked about Duke's. Duke's is a hotel in London. Martini tourism actually is a thing. I'm hoping to do an episode on martini tourism later on down the channel, once we've gone through some cocktails, once we've kind of established, set the mood, so to speak. But Duke's is a hotel in London, and their bar, I should say, it's a bar in London, and they're known for this frozen martini. Basically, they have a bottle of gin in the freezer, they pull it out, give you your frozen glass, pour the frozen gin directly in, and they mist the glass with vermouth and an atomizer. I actually do have an atomizer. I have a set. I'll show you guys at some point in time. I think it's a fun display set, but unless I'm having a martini party, unless I'm having people to come drink it, I never use it, just because of the fact that I don't have refrigerator space. Maybe if I had a refrigerator, but even then, it's one of these where I'm like, I would have to make sure that I'm using this vermouth atomizer quickly, so that we get through it in a fast, in a fast pace. But back to, I completely lost my train of thought. I'm sorry that I rambled there for a minute. That's probably going to be closer to this one. Again, if you guys ask for it, I'll go ahead and make a video on that, atomized frozen gin with the misting of the vermouth. And I think that's going to be a fun one. I think that's actually going to be a little bit more intense. It's going to be probably closer to the extra dry in this case, just because it's not diluted. That's unadulterated frozen gin that's going to be just lightly misted on the surface by the vermouth, as opposed to this, or these I should say, where we're actually diluting the gin with a little bit of ice, so it does kind of mellow it out a little bit. All right, so again, we have the classic martini, dry martini. We have the wet martini, which is basically a 2-to-1 ratio. We have the extra dry, and then we have a vermouth rinse. And like I said before, I didn't do bone dry, because bone dry is on the other end of the spectrum here, where basically there is no vermouth. It's going to be, they pass the bottle, the open bottle, near the martini glass. And then on the other side over here, we have the, on the other side of the spectrum, we have the 50-50 martini, and then the reverse martini, which is more vermouth than gin. And we'll talk about those. Like I said, I can go ahead and make those if you guys are interested. If you guys want to see what that's like, you let me know. Comment down below. Again, like and subscribe. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to finish these off camera so I don't make a spectacle of myself. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.